Welcome to the Metamorphosis Podcast, hosted by Aaron Howe in the United States and myself, Nora Brucker in Germany. In this podcast, we talk to people about transformation and the moments and events that change us. We hope you enjoy. For this episode, I'm joined by a fellow German. Christian Als is a young entrepreneur who quit his lucrative engineering career in one of the biggest global companies to set off on the adventure of actually founding his own business. On this journey, he not only realized that becoming a founder causes sleepless nights, but also completely changes your mindset, your personality, and also your lifestyle. Today, Christian is the co-founder of a top 50 German technology startup. In our conversation, he talks about the ups and downs of building a business and how very difficult it actually is to do this in Germany. Christian and me both grew up in an area of Germany that is called the Ruhrgebiet, or Ruhr area. It has pretty much been the most industrialized part of Germany, with a high focus on steel plants and coal mining. It is a relatively small area, extremely densely populated though, and it almost feels like all of those little and big cities are pretty much on top of each other. Our area has been known for soot and down-to-earth miners, with a completely own culture, and that culture is still highly celebrated in our region. Just to give you some context, both my father as well as my grandfather worked at the same steel plant until it actually shut down. And at every birthday, we're still singing all of the songs that are very well known for miners out there. It's just part of our heritage, of our culture. Well, in the end of the 80s, though, pretty much all of the industry shut down, which left our area devastated with high unemployment rates and actually also a clash of cultures. It took a long time for the area to recover. And when I actually entered the job market, which, has been a couple of years, well, people, they told me to leave. And I know a lot of young people who did, because there were not really any perspectives out there for us, and there were actually not a lot of jobs. All of that changed over the past couple of years, however. The mining and steel culture are still very much valued, and they're, in my opinion, also standing for hard workers who are not afraid to get dirty. So it isn't really surprising that the children and the grandchildren in this area, took it upon themselves to build the businesses and infrastructure that actually has been missing all of these years. In fact, over the past around 5 years, the Ruhr area became one of the biggest startup valleys right after Berlin. By now, it is a flourishing area that is breaking all of the stereotypes. Hardworking, creative minds are now shaping the area, and they are slowly pushing all of those old, dusty structures out of the way. I'm insanely proud to be part of this change in my area, and I know Christian is too, but he's a lot more humble about it than I am.
See, I come from a upper middle class family. My mother is a teacher. My father is also an engineer, electrical engineer. And my father has always been working for one company his whole life, the traditional engineering career path in Germany. I grew up in that very secure environment where having a constant and very secure job, a well-paid job at a big enterprise is a thing which is good.
Yeah.
And that's why I've chosen to, focus on the more technical stuff already in school and also then during my studies at university. And that's why I've chosen the engineering path. And when I started mechanical engineering, there was nothing going on around startups or entrepreneurship, founding your company. The dream of the German engineer is to work for one of these big companies, especially in the automotive sector. And that's what German society really thinks is a good way. So that's the environment I grew up with. And I started having my first thoughts around my professional career. So there was never the option for me to actually think about founding your own company.
Yeah.
Even though I always had this back in my mind that I actually wanted to do that. I knew pretty early on, I knew that I wanted to do that one day, but I never really had the path set or the option set in my mind. What can it be?
Christian's upbringing is actually not that uncommon in Germany. For people who are growing up in countries like maybe the United States, while founding a business or even just switching careers, that is something that they're very familiar with. It's widely accepted and also pretty much woven into society. If you're in Germany, however, that is a completely different story. Because in Germany, you choose what you want to do for the rest of your life when you're either finishing school at 16 and starting a traineeship, or when you're around 18 or 19 and you're actually going off to college. And what you study there, that is what you do in your job. Best case scenario, for the rest of your life. Switching to a new career has been more than difficult for Germans for a long time because stability and long-time experience in a specific area, that's highly encouraged in our job market. Just to give you an example, I actually studied cultural management. And when I finished my studies, I wanted to work in all different kinds of art. So I worked for festivals and in museums and for dance theater. But even in my small niche of the arts, I was not specialized enough because they pretty much want you to choose one part of the arts and stick to it. And that goes for all different kinds of jobs out there. Well, even Germany has been pretty much changing and adapting to the younger generations, though. Still, the industry in Germany is taking a while to get accustomed to CVs without a clear direction, or applicants like me who are not really prone to settle into one specific niche. If you got a high paid, prestigious job like an engineer, you've pretty much hit the jackpot in Germany. Often employees are spending their entire career at one or maybe two companies. And their life is pretty much laid out for them all the way up to retirement. There's still many countries and companies who are desperately trying to hire our punctual, hardworking, precise, and very well educated German engineers. And there's still a lot of people out there who are looking for exactly that stability. But then there's also the few like Christian, who threw it all away, like some would say, and completely started new. No set retirement plan, no milestones for the next 30 years, and certainly not any security of what's to come, but also a lot of amazing experiences. Not everyone in your environment sees it like that, though. Especially in a country where security and safety is so much valued, not everyone will support you because they might not understand what you're actually doing. Or maybe they're just afraid for you. Well, I experienced that, and Christian did too.
A more entrepreneurial approach was pretty disruptive for my personal and private environment. And I would say even today, not everyone really understands why I did that and why I took the risks that obviously come with that choice. But the more you get into that world and the more the people understand what you're doing and you're explaining what you're doing and why you're doing it, the more, I wouldn't say cherish, that's not the right word, but I would say they accept the choice and they can understand why me as a person, why I took that choice. So definitely was something where I really had to work on, because I knew that there was some people around me, especially in my family and my closer friends, where I knew that they would have, I wouldn't say problems, but that they were not the people who would think, okay, hey, that's great, Christian, do that. That's exactly the right choice. They were also struggling with the decision. So it was very hard for me to actually go out and tell them that I'm going to do that step, because I was sure that I'm going to do that. I was very certain about that. And there were some people where it took me a lot to actually tell them.
And when you actually decided, that moment of actually deciding that you're gonna quit your job and you're gonna start this new business, how many years have you been working for the company that you've been working with at that time?
Well, considering all the stuff I did during my studies, almost 6 years.
Okay. And what brought that final decision on? And I mean, you didn't just do it alone, you also took a couple of your colleagues with
Yeah.
you. So like what was that moment? Like was it a slow process that was coming on, or was there something specific where you're like, okay, this is the time, I'm gonna do it now?
That's a really good question. And I think It definitely was a slow process in my case. There was not a certain tipping point. It was more a slow and growing process. And I would say like it started about 1.5, maybe 2 years before I actually left the company. And my co-founders, or the people I met at the company, they were definitely a very important reason for me to actually do that step, because I mean I'm still a German.
You like safety.
Yeah, so it's still a thing, right? And having great people around you and knowing about their skills and their capabilities and stuff, it definitely was something that pushed me more towards that decision. But I think the main thing for me is that I've always worked on new technology topics, especially in the area of artificial intelligence, like very disruptive stuff, which I believe would definitely change the shape of our society, of our world, and how we work and how we produce, especially in the industrial area where it's starting to grow right now. But I also saw that like these things are growing in other regions of the world faster than in Europe and especially in Germany. So I thought these are very important topics, but things are pretty slow in our country and also in our company. For me, it was very important that we learn about that topics, know how to handle them, and get our own European and German opinion about this topics, like a standpoint that where we really can, compete with other regions in the world and have our own opinion around these topics. You have all these political things going on in massive enterprises, and that slows things down massively. And things were too slow in my former employer, so I thought, okay, to speed things up, maybe it's a good way to found your own company, because then you're the decision maker and you can push things forward as fast as you like.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about your new life, because
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty much what happened, right? When you work for a big company, you are much more behind the scenes. But when you build a business and you become a startup founder, then all of a sudden your entire life kind of takes place in the public, right? You are much more in the forefront. People, as a startup, you need to build your own personal brand as well, because you are a very small company, and you need to go out there and talk about what you're doing, and you have to pitch, and you have to be on stage, and all of these kind of things. Like, how did your life change from being an employee
Mm.
to becoming this founder of a company?
That's a great question. It changed a lot.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, I went through that as well. So
It
yeah.
really changed a lot. Even working for my former employer, it was like since we were working on very, very sexy topics and topics that were talked about a lot and got a lot of attention from the management side. We already, like, you get quickly up in the management, or you get a lot of attention. Let's say it that way.
Yeah.
And so do your presentations and stuff, but everything happens within that company and within that
Mhm.
company scope and the company world, which, like, big companies have their own world and culture, standards, values,
Yeah.
you name it, like lots of things. So if I compare that, like my perspective on what is possible, what you can do in the professional world then and now, I would say I was aware of maybe 1% of the stuff which is actually possible. Possible, like what do I mean with that? I mean the businesses you can build, the money you can raise, the opportunities, like the different cultural frameworks you can put into action,
Mm.
how to work. Like, there are so many possibilities out there which were not within my scope of possibilities when I was working for that big company, and which I'm totally aware of today. Of course, I'm getting to know lots of stuff today also, but I learned to be very, very open for different perspectives on working in general, like how to work, with whom to work, when to work, all the things that are very, very strict
Mm.
in a existing cultural setting that you have in incumbent companies, but which should be definitely looked at more precisely when you build your own company. And what I thought was very interesting, and one of the things I really care about still today, is you really need to think about positioning. Like, who are you as a person? Who are you as a company? Like, what do you want to be seen as? And that's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
Because first of all, you have to be aware of yourself as a founder. Then you have to talk with your co-founders. How do you see yourself? What are the values you want to put into your company? What are the things you want to achieve as a person? And then you transfer that on the company, and then you grow the company around these values. And this is a very interesting process, which I think you really have to care about a lot. And you really have to be strict on your positioning and defend this position. And for me, that was a very intense process to find that position for myself as a person. And it took me months to find that. Like, what is important for me? And how do I want to treat my employees?
And how did it all affect you personally? Like, I know you once said to me that you're thinking completely differently now than you were thinking when you were an employee.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. A good thing of being an entrepreneur and being like the owner of a company or a leader is that you're the only one to blame. There's nobody
Yeah.
above you. There's nothing you can blame for things that go wrong. And that's a habit that actually exists in many companies, and
Mhm.
which is easy to do. I mean, complaining is a very easy thing.
Especially as a German.
Yes.
We love to complain.
Absolutely. And it's easy, and of course, I mean, I'm German too, so I mean, it's sometimes it's also fun, right? Like you're 10 people sitting around a table, and everyone's complaining about their job and their leaders and their bosses and the economy and Corona and whatever.
Yeah.
And it's a great thing, and everybody agrees and says, yes, I'm in the same situation. You're right. You can't do that, or you are the one to blame. I mean, you can still blame the economy or the customers or like whatever, but at the end, you're the one that has to do the changes, like not on a small scale, but on a big scale. And the great thing is your impact actually transfers
Yeah.
into action and into changing things. In a small company, you make decisions, you take actions, and you really feel these actions. And that's something that I really, really like, because I mean, you have employees and you're responsible for their income. That's how I feel, at least.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's true. It's their livelihood, right?
And I'm very, very proud of having that awesome team set up. But
Mhm.
at the end, you're the one that is responsible, that, there is money in the
Yeah.
bank at the end of the month and you can pay your employees. And I mean, they are buying houses, they're getting loans and everything. And this is a responsibility that you feel. At least I feel it. And
You should feel it, so it makes you a good boss if you feel it.
absolutely.
Because it seems like a lot of bosses do not really know that
Yes.
their employees have lives as well.
Yes. Yeah. Unfortunately, there are some of them out there. You're right. What also is interesting, like I changed my total mindset from maybe the traditional leadership point of view, where you have your employees work for you and you represent the company or a department or a team, and the people work for you and you use their results to present their customers, bosses, whatever. And I totally switched that mindset towards, I'm the one working for them. Like, my job at the end is to take care that they can do their job and they can focus on their job, and they don't have to have any struggles or any worries about, do I get my money at the end of the month, and so on and so forth. This is a leadership perspective, which I think is the only perspective which is right, actually.
And sometimes also makes you, have sleepless nights.
Yes, that's the private, the personal part. You have to work on yourself
Yeah.
to to cope with that. You have to find strategies that you can sleep at night, that you're not worried all the time about things going on, that the pressure has a massive impact on your private life.
Mhm.
And that's stuff you really have to work on actively. It's nothing that comes with time. That's what I learned, definitely. So I learned that I have to work on myself as a person to be a good leader in the professional world. And that's something I never really took care of when I was working at my former employer, because I mean,
Because you didn't have to. I mean, you just work, you go about your day, you start your work. Of course, you're part of something big, but you don't have that responsibility, and you don't have to necessarily, keep all of the problems of a company in your mind when you go home at the end of the day. That's somebody else's job. But when you're that person who's responsible for everything, then it is your job to kind of figure out like what the next couple of years are going to look like.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I mean, Germany is not a startup country. It's a country where, doing your own thing, founding your own company is not, it's accepted, but it's not something where the people think, oh, he's great that he's doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's more like, oh my God, this person is crazy. Giving up
Yeah.
everything. What about retirement?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, and the whole system also reflects that opinion or the mindset towards that.
Yeah.
It's a system which is not set up for, making it easy for founders to build their own company. I mean, a great thing, and that's definitely one thing that helped me, was that, especially in the Ruhr area where we live and we found our company, there was a community growing around startups, and, we're becoming cool, right? It was cool to found a startup. And it wasn't that much accepted throughout the society, I would say, here in that area. I mean, we have Berlin. Berlin is a big thing, and it's internationally known, and that's a startup hub. But the broad population of Germany, startups are still not really in the scope of the people. Yeah, yeah, and that helped me a lot. I mean, there were some institutions that helped you through that process of actually founding a company, doing all that legal stuff and so on and so forth. And that was a helping hand in the first moments, in the first months of our startup, definitely.
Let's talk about your company, actually, because you have employees and you are successful. You've been nominated for awards. You've been part of the top 50 startups of this year. And you have not been on the market for that long. I mean, that is something that we have to absolutely stress here. When did you found your company?
So the whole project, or the name of the company, is Sentin. Maybe we should say this. The whole project Sentin started October 2018.
Which has been 2 years.
Yes. That's also the month where we left our former employer, and we had the great opportunity to be part of a federal funding program which supports young startups in the technological sphere. And so that was our first financial support that we got. And we started our company, had our offices at the university. And that was January 2019. So, yeah, 1.5 years ago, actually.
So it's been 1.5 years. So stop being German for a second and brag about all of the success.
Well, the funny thing is, and that obviously comes with changes. I mean, changes always mean that you have to face uncertainty somehow.
Yes.
Because when you change things, you can never know what's really going to happen. And there are lots of uncertainties going on. And we actually started with a totally different business idea. So we wanted to do something totally different at the beginning. And so we did a pivot after a couple of months in the market, actually. So we already approached customers and stuff. And this is something you have to learn as an entrepreneur too. I mean, you're on a learning path throughout like the whole entrepreneurial life. You never know everything, and you have to adopt things, you have to change things, and you have to be open to that. And once we had our new business idea set up, which is basically to automate image interpretation processes in industrial inspections, which happen a lot in manufacturing processes, industrial plants like oil and gas plants, in the automotive industry, aerospace industry, consumer goods industry, like everywhere where human beings look at things to check whether the quality is sufficient or not. These are processes that we can automate, because what we basically do is with our software, we imitate the the human capability to see things. And we utilize technology from the field of artificial intelligence. Of course, yes, we won some awards, some bigger ones, some smaller ones, which are always pushed us to even work harder on our company, to sharpen the business idea that we had, to build our business model and to extend that. But the voice, which is the most important one, is the voice of our customers. And this is where the really success lies. Like today, we're talking to big automobile manufacturers in Germany. We have projects set up there, and that's something we are very, very proud of. Our customer base, not only big enterprises, but only the medium-sized companies that play a massive part in German industry. That's something I'm very proud of. That we learned a lot about sales and how to approach our customers, how to set up projects and to actually sell our product, and that our product gets very positive feedback and it actually works. That's a great thing. Like it's really a great feeling to have a product develop, and it's just great to see that it works and that it actually helps the customers to gain value, that they can automate things, they can save costs, they get better quality, and that you help them with your product to become a better company. And that's something I'm very, very proud of. You're a startup and you're a young company, you're a small company, but that's something I'm very proud of also, because we did a lot in marketing and positioning out there that took us into that position, and to be, or that people are aware of us. I mean, I go to customers and they say, "Oh, I've seen your latest post on LinkedIn," and they're not even connected with our company on LinkedIn, which is a great thing, because we push a lot of stuff out there, just to be seen, to be out there, and to be connected with the topics that we're working on. And that's something I'm very proud of, that we actually achieved that level of awareness out there. That's definitely a great thing.
But I mean, I guess it's probably also nerve-wracking to talk to these gigantic companies who are such a big part of our industry and all of that stuff. And I mean, talk about nerve-wracking, just building your own business and foregoing all of the security that you had before. The entire process of becoming self-employed must have been very nerve-wracking as well. Like, have you ever been really afraid?
No. One of the great things of my personality is that I'm more of an aftercare guy. I think that's the right word.
Ask for forgiveness later.
So I'm really open to take risks, because I'm 100% sure that I will find a way to cope with the situation. That's something I worked on a lot. I've not been this way all my life, but it's something that really helped me through that process of becoming self-employed, definitely. And yeah, nerve-wracking is a good word. And of course, there are situations where you really feel the pressure, and I wouldn't say become afraid of things, but massive respect for the situations you're going into. And you know that there are situations where you have to perform, because you only have the one shot, right? And you're aware of that. And you know that it's not only for me, it's for my company, because that's the role I'm in. I'm representing the company. I want to move things forward. I have the responsibility for my team, for the employees working for our company. So that's something you feel and you have to get familiar with. One thing that helps me a lot is I'm 100% committed on the stuff that we're doing. Like I'm 100% sure that we're doing the right thing, and that the stuff we sell, the product we sell, helps our customers and helps them to achieve their goals. I'm 100% sure. And that's something everybody has to be aware of when they become self-employed or building their own company. They really have to be 100% committed of what they're doing, because otherwise the difficult situations you find yourself in from time to time will be too nerve-wracking, and maybe the pressure gets too high. Yeah, it can really break you as a person.
Yeah. Let's get a little bit personal. So when I started, becoming self-employed and becoming a founder of a company as well, my personal life changed as well. Like, I mean, obviously, I still have most of the same friends that I had before. Although some relationships definitely changed because you have a very different life than when you are employed. Like when you're employed, you have a job where you go to that job early in the morning and you leave maybe in the afternoon or a little bit later. Sometimes you have a job where you have overtime, but in general, you have a job that you do and then you have your private life. But when you're a company founder or when you're self-employed, obviously those two things kind of mix much more. And so I had relationships and friends that didn't really survive me having such a focus on building my own business. And I'm sure that you've experienced something similar, but also I've found many new people and built many new relationships, especially in that community of startups, because everybody else knows what it's like to be in some situations, to have these nerve-wracking situations, to sometimes be unsure if what you're doing is the right thing, and being a constant part of change. Like, how did all of this affect you personally? Like your relationships, your family, everything?
Yeah. What I experienced pretty much the same things that you just described. Um, of course, your personal life changes a lot. I never really stop working, and I actually don't start. It's like, as you said, it's more a mixture. It's
Right?
like it's my life, right? Personal relationships is a massive topic, obviously, because I mean you change as a person a lot. Your habits change, your perspective on life changes a lot. You learn to see more the possibilities side of life and the risk, and again, that it's not a certain point where you have this mind shift. It's also a slow growing process, but you as a person change. And obviously I also made the experience that
Mm.
not everyone in your personal life can follow you on that path, and you lose people. But for me, that's okay. I stopped, fighting for these relationships, because when you as a person change, then there is no common ground for the relationship anymore, because you went into different directions. I mean, the decision you have to take is, do I as a person move forward and thrive, or do I or am I just the result of the circumstances that I'm surrounded with, and get more a passive perspective on life?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
I think you have a massive responsibility for yourself to really live the life that you want to live. Because, I mean, at the first place, you have to make yourself happy. And after that, you can make everyone else happy. I think it doesn't work the other way around. That's something I learned and I experienced. And obviously, it has impacted my my personal surrounding. But I mean, as you said, like the great thing is you get in touch with so many interesting people, especially in the startup world, in the entrepreneurial world, in the profession. Like when you approach people from the more entrepreneurial perspective, also customers, for example, like everyone who's within that ecosystem, it's just a massive gain in my life. And I came across so many interesting people, and I simply love people. I love getting to know interesting people who can tell their stories and have their own perspective on their lives. And that's a great thing. And I'm very, I really appreciate the opportunity.
Hmm. Yeah,
There is definitely a trade-off between, losing people and getting into new relationships with people.
definitely. So, what was Christian like when he was working in the corporate world, and what is Christian like now?
Well, there was a part of me which always played a role somehow. I wouldn't say I was an actor, but I did what people expected me to do. I was an engineer and should work at a big company in Germany and so on and so forth. And I was simply doing a lot of stuff which I actually didn't want to do. But I did it because, I was in that role, and I always found excuses for myself to say, oh, okay, you have to do that because, it's part of life, and it's part of the job you're doing. And I think that was also a part, the process to get into the mindset that I actually wanted to leave the company and want to change my life.
Hmm. Interesting.
Today, of course, I mean, you have things in your job that have to be done, but I feel a lot of more freedom. I would say I'm definitely more open. I've always been a very open-minded person, but today I'm absolutely more open-minded than I was a couple of years ago, because I really learned that things that I was a little skeptical about a couple of years ago, I simply tried them out and they work for me. That's maybe the major change I made within these couple of years. Yeah.
How do you envision your future? Like, do you make plans? Because I, for example, so much stuff happened in my life over the past couple of years that, like, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I would have never answered where I am right now. But like, how do you envision your future? Do you make plans?
I do have plans for my future, definitely. I have very certain plans for sentin, for our company. I want to see ourselves in the future. But as you said, and that's a great thing in life, isn't it? That, things end up being totally different than planned. And I think that's having that basis of uncertainty in life is a great thing, because there are many, surprising things going on and happening. That's a great thing, and one thing I really love in life. But I found that, especially when you have a company, it's very important for you and your team to have this envisioned future, the status you want to be in a couple of years. In my personal life, I learned that you know things are changing so fast, and a lot of stuff. You meet a lot of people you would have never expect to meet, and you get new ideas all the time. So that there is an overwhelming uncertainty you can't really put a plan on. So you really have to you have to stay flexible in a certain point. So if you would ask me, like, where do you see Christian Els in 5 to 10 years, I would definitely see myself having other projects besides sentin. The main goal for me is to still be one of the leaders of sentin, to have the chance to shape the company, to let it grow, and to be a good leader, to be a role model maybe for some of the employees or other founders, younger founders. The main thing is definitely sentin and making this company successful.
Okay, last but not least, what would you advise people who might find themselves in the same situation that you have been in?
Do it. Do it. Many people come to me and tell me that they're having a job, and they're struggling with their job, and they would like to found their own business or become self-employed and stuff. And I always say, when you have this little spark, somewhere in your body, do it. Because the hardest part, and also for me, the hardest part was to making that final decision to actually do it. That was the hardest part. To convince yourself that, you've made this decision, you have to follow that decision, and you have to live with the consequences. That's the hardest part for me. If you feel that spark, it's more a gut feeling than a really 100% certain decision, which is based on certain arguments. Then just do it. Follow that gut feeling, because mostly it's right, because it reflects your emotions, and many times in life you should follow them, and not only rational argument. Yeah, I mean, life can be so diverse, so meaningful, so full of experiences, that it's actually, I think, a waste to not let these emotions thrive somehow and follow them. There is this very interesting analogy for entrepreneurship. Being an entrepreneur is jumping out of an airplane and setting and building up your parachute on the way down, and that's pretty much how it feels. But the hardest decision is to actually make the jump, right? And you'll figure it out, because you're forced to do that. You're forced to figure it out somehow, and you will, absolutely. The most important decision in life is if you want to live an active life or a passive life, being the result of the things that surround you, the circumstances, or if you want to take an active role and shape the life in a way you would like to shape it.
Choosing an active life. That is definitely a concept that we can all get behind of. And it is something that we should follow in all aspects of our life. It is also basically what this podcast is all about. We talk about change and life-changing moments, about those specific turning points in life. Christian had a lot of them, and he chose his active life. He's shaping what is ahead of him. And by doing that, he's not only pursuing his own happiness, but he's also shaping a whole industry. He's a role model for all of the people out there who might have the spark in them and who are actively seeking change. So if you have this spark, follow Christian's lead. Do something about it. You will not regret it. The Metamorphosis Podcast is produced by Aaron Howe in the United States and me, Nora Brucker, in Germany. Thank you to all of our supporters, and of course a huge thank you to our guests who are telling us their stories from around the globe about change and life-changing moments. For more information about each episode, check out officialmetamorphosispodcast.com and follow us on Instagram at officialmetamorphosispodcast for an exclusive look behind the scenes and our guests. We're happy for you to leave your thoughts on each episode, and we are very much looking forward to hearing from you. This is the Metamorphosis Podcast with Aaron and Nora.